In today's gospel reading, we have an account of the multiplication of the loaves and the fish. And just a reminder, I'm sure you all know this is recorded twice on two separate occasions. In other words, it's a very important event. It's a very important miracle because in many ways it's a foreshadowing of the Eucharist. So in the same way that our Lord multiplied the loaves and the fish, he would multiply his body, but in such a way that his body would be present under the appearance of bread and of course his wine, or his blood under the appearance of wine. Notice that it emphasizes that our Lord had compassion on the crowds. He was worried about them. You know, they had been with him all day. And so he cares for them. So when people come to him, he manifests his goodness, he manifests his power, he manifests his love. And it's a reminder for us to come to him. But notice earlier in today's gospel reading, near the beginning, it mentions that he had compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So they were like sheep without a shepherd. As you know, there are various parables where the analogy of sheep is used to describe mankind. So the good shepherd leaves the 99 in search of the one that is lost, and similar ones. So our Lord is the good shepherd, and we in many ways are like sheep. And sheep are herd animals. They tend to congregate in flocks, but they're not very bright animals. So sheep can easily wander off on their own, get lost, and be attacked by wild animals. When they're together as a flock, they're safer, especially if they have a shepherd looking after them. Sheep also tend to go wherever the flock goes. So if all of a sudden all the sheep start running, the other ones will follow afterwards. They know to stay with the flock. So in many ways, we are like sheep. So sometimes we wander off on our own. We don't want to be obedient to God. We want to do our own things. We might even rebel against our parents or norms in society. We often want to do our own things. And we're also like members of a flock. We are easily influenced by our peers, the people around us. If people start dressing a certain way, we start dressing a certain way. I've given the example before. Why do people start swearing? Usually nobody is forced to say bad words. They start doing it because they hear their peers doing it, or maybe their parents doing it. And they choose to do it of their own because they want to belong. They want to imitate. And it's important that we realize that we are also very strongly and easily influenced by the media. So in many ways, the media represents our peers, so people that you admire, people that you look up to, movie stars and things like that. But even in regards to, talk show hosts or even the news that comes from the media, people just tend to believe it. In other words, not only are they influenced by the media, but for many people, it's almost like the media becomes their shepherd. And when we consider this pandemic, we can see that clearly happening. People are just abiding by whatever we are told to do. And I think part of the reason is because of fear. So fear can be a very powerful tool to control people, to manipulate people, to get people to do whatever they want them to do. And I just wanted to point out, there's many examples that I can give, but, for example, in regards to treatment for the coronavirus. So, number of doctors have said that hydrochloroquine is a very effective, very good treatment, especially when it's caught in the early stages. And all the media was against it. Many doctors were against it, but hundreds of doctors were coming forward and saying, no, it really works. It's very beneficial. It's helped so many of my patients, and they were being shut down. And apparently there was some study done, but in this study, they gave people extremely high doses. So hydrochloroquine is something that is regularly used against malaria, so there's no real danger provided you take the right doses. But what's interesting, and I got this not from alternate news sources, some of this information, yes, but recently in the regular media, it indicated that hydrochloroquine does seem to work. In other words, they admit it. So all this time they were leading people astray, or in other words, not allowing doctors to present their findings, to present their facts. And the whole point I wanted to make is that we have to be careful because the media isn't always telling us the truth. And it's important that we realize this. And there's other areas that I could speak about this, but human beings can always let us down. I mean, even when we think of the hierarchy of the church, the priests and bishops and even the popes. So we're not all perfect. And we know that there have been some bad individuals in the church, individuals who've abused minors and individuals who perhaps have their own agenda. In the past, when someone didn't agree with church teaching, they would leave the church. But in more recent times, people who have an agenda, when they disagree with church teaching, they stay in the church, and from within the church, they spread their own ideas, their own agenda. And there are certain individuals or certain groups who actually sought to infiltrate the church, to corrupt the church from within. So in other words, who can we trust? The reality is we cannot even trust ourselves, because so often we make resolutions after we go to confession, or New Year's resolutions. And how many times have we gone against our resolutions or just abandoned our resolutions completely? So even we ourselves are not trustworthy. We cannot trust ourselves. So ultimately, it's only God that we can trust. And it's important that we remind ourselves of this fact that He is our shepherd. And how do we ensure that we are following Him? Well, we need to be familiar with the Scriptures, especially with the New Testament. So it's important for us as Christians to read from the Bible every day, not just to read the daily readings of Mass, but to read from the Bible, to read from the New Testament every day. A good habit is to read a chapter a day. And of course, to be prayerful, because when we are praying, we are looking to our shepherd, we are looking to God. We receive His inspirations, His enlightenment, so that we can know what the truth is, or God can guide us in the decisions that we make in our lives. So ultimately, God is the only one that we can trust. He is the source of all truth. Human beings will always let us down, or can possibly let us down. So we have to be careful. This is why sometimes when I preach on things, I say, if you don't believe me, check it out in the Catechism. It's the official teachings of the Church. That's another good source to look at, the Catechism of the Church. So let us look to our Lord, and let us keep in mind also that in the same way that our Lord had compassion on this crowd and arranged for them to have food to nourish them, so too when we make Christ our true shepherd, when we entrust ourselves to Him, and when we seek to be more fully united to Him, He will have compassion on us, and He will help us and console us in whatever difficulties we may be facing or struggling with.